This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Got a car to sell but no time to waste? Hop on to Carvana.com to get a real offer for your car in seconds. All you have to do is enter your license plate, answer a few quick questions, and if you accept the offer, Carvana will pay you as soon as you hand the keys over. They even offer same-day pickup in many cities. Save your time, score some cash, and sell your car the convenient way to Carvana. Pickup times vary. Fees may apply.
For the McLaren Formula One team, speed is everything. When every second counts, there's no time to dig through data. Dropbox Dash finds what you need fast across all your work apps, so you can focus on what matters. Less busy work, more breakthroughs. High-performing teams rely on high-performing tools like Dropbox Dash. Learn more at dropbox.com/McLaren F1.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you.
Ooh.
Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
The Rams lose 17-19 versus the Cleveland Browns in this final week of the 2025 preseason. Who are some standout players? We'll also talk about other news and notes on this post-game reaction episode here on the Rams Up Podcast Network. What's going on, Rams Nation? Welcome back to the Rams Up Podcast Network. I'm Ian. If you're on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn that notification bell on, and if you're on the audio only or podcast only side of things, share this podcast with all your friends. Any of those options helps other Rams fans to see our content, and I very much appreciate it. But man, for a finale of the preseason where we know Rams starters and even a lot of Rams backups or quote unquote second string players don't play, not a bad week 3 for the preseason, but unfortunately, the Rams lose 17-19 in this game here. As yes, there were not a lot of key players, and again, those backups are second string guys getting notable action. As everyone who was not suited up or who was maybe suited up and not getting any serious playing time, you could assume, rightfully so, that their roster spots are secure. So we got a lot of fringe guys, or the bubble guys, you could say. Guys who are not 100% to make the roster, not 100% to even make the practice squad, and this is their final, what's the word I want to say? I guess their final exam to see if they belong on any NFL team, not just the Rams. So, hey, we got a lot of good action. And let's start with quarterback Dresser Wynn. As shout out to him. He had some good moments, Rams Nation. And for a guy who is the 4-string quarterback, who is someone who is, I guess, a quote-unquote camp arm, right? Someone who's there just to be able to throw passes to other wide receivers when the roster is 90 out of what will be cut down to 53. But you know what? Shout out to Dresser. Sincerely. The dude didn't have a bad day at all. I thought for a guy who is fringe on that bubble of making any roster in the NFL. Not too shabby. 15 of 23 for 190 yards, 8.3 yards per attempt. He had his one touchdown. And quarterback rating 105.3 out of roughly 120, depending on, whatever metric you like to go off of. But hey, for a guy who was deployed out there to get some type of action to be able to showcase himself, not just for the Rams, as we all assume, he's not going to be on this team. But for any other team, whether that would be in the NFL or maybe even, I guess you can say, the minor league of the XFL, USFL, whatever league that is. I'm blanking on the name right now, as that is the spring summer league of next year. But hey, he has been around. He has gotten a ton of action as a Ram these past couple years, and I don't think it was a bad outing at all. Took 4 sacks, lost 21 yards on that, but let's be honest about it. Along with him, there were a lot of other offensive linemen who are fighting to be in the NFL in any capacity, not just on the Rams. So there were plenty of times where he was not set up for success. He didn't have this perfect protection. He didn't even have guys that Stetson Bennett was, lucky to play behind in the previous couple of games of this preseason. So Dresser did all he could, and he had some big time throws. Think of the sideline to Stoops, right? The son of legendary Oklahoma coach Bob Stoops. Think about just his wherewithal to be able to navigate the pocket when he got a chance and to make some throws. So for a guy, again, who is unlikely to make this roster, I think you got to give a quick round of applause to Dresser for being out there. It wasn't pretty. There were some bad moments, some bad throws, but I think overall for being the 4th guy on this Rams roster, quarterback-wise, and facing the Cleveland Browns starting defense, facing the Cleveland Browns backups, and also facing their third stringers. I mean, he faced every level of this Browns defense in terms of starters, backups, and third stringers and bubble, fringe guys. And he held his own and, did enough to say, hey, I ain't just some scrub dude. I can actually, throw the ball around and get some stuff done. Was it perfect? Again, absolutely not. There were some bad passes in this game from him for sure. But for the setup, backup, third string, fringe O linemen, fringe wide receivers, et cetera, fringe running backs towards the end of the game, not a bad performance from Dresser Wynn. I thought, he deserves some shout out for what he did. But how about someone who was not on the fringe of making this roster? Terrence Ferguson, the first pick of this past 2025 draft for these Los Angeles Rams in the second round after they traded back and got it. I mean, he didn't get a ton of burn in this game, but the new number 18, shout out to Roman Gabriel, shout out to young Cooper Kupp and others who wore that number. Not bad, as he had 2 receptions, 2 catches for 48 yards. And a big chunk of that came on that sideline throw. Shout out to Dresser for throwing a good ball, where Terrence was able to adjust and get that over-the-shoulder catch that looked pretty dang impressive. And he obviously had some other moments blocking. He had his other catch and rumbling forward and getting tough yardage, making defenders miss, lowering his shoulder, getting those tough physical yardage. I mean, finally we get to see this guy play some meaningful football. As, man, that growing injury really set him back in terms of progress, of learning this offense, being out there on the field, I should say, in terms of learning the offense, right? You can be studying in the playbook, and that helps a ton. But for a rookie of any position, getting out there and physically doing it is the key. And finally, Terrence Ferguson, the young tight end, was able to do that in this game. And I thought that was good. And I thought in his couple opportunities, he looked pretty dang good to me. And you hear the broadcast, Mina Kimes, JB Long, Maurice Jones-Drew, all joke about, hey, Sean McVay's been saying we need to get more tight ends involved for, seems like, his entire 9+ year tenure as the LA Rams head coach. But it feels like with how much they've talked this guy up, Terrence Ferguson, how much Les Snead talked him up in the middle of the game interview with JB and himself, and just other news and notes from reporters, other players, other coaches. I mean, there are a ton of expectations for Terrence Ferguson, and I think we saw a glimpse of his potential where a big-time receiving threat looks smooth running. It doesn't look like he's forcing himself to be at full speed. Again, you saw the good ball tracking in the air, meaning, hey, when it's up in the air and you got to locate it and put your hands in the right place and adjust your body, we saw that on display. And then, of course, the blocking will develop over his Rams tenure, not just this season, but for future seasons. And I think everyone should feel pretty good about what you saw on his limited opportunity. As you know, he played a quarter and some change, but in those 2 catches that he was thrown to, you and all of us should feel good about where he's at. And hopefully he stays healthy. No more pulled this, no more banged up this, no growing this, no hamstring that. Hopefully he'll be ready to go week 1 and beyond and have an impact, not just as, hey, when Tyler Higbee's tired, you'll get, a couple snaps. Hopefully he's trusted enough by the staff, by Sean McVay and others to be able to go out there with Higbee, with the starting offense, not just for, again, spelling Tyler Higbee. And we'll see if he makes an impact. But what we saw today, double thumbs up. I think that's a good sign that should be the case for sure. So that's a standout player that I enjoyed as well. But you know who else stood out big time in this game? He was talked about a ton on the broadcast, and the film doesn't lie based on the previous 2 games. And I'm sure this film and this past Cleveland Browns game will no doubt be no different. For strong safety, Tanner Ingle, as he showcased why he should make the team. I mean, the dude is so freaking physical. I mean, my goodness. Yet again in this game, he's knocking guys out, concussing other players. Again, it's not purposeful. He's not helmet to helmet hitting somebody. He's not leading and spearing players, as that gets penalized in the NFL and will get you ejected in college and high school football. He's not doing any of that. He's just laying the boom, quote unquote. And this style of play, I agree with what Maurice Jones-Drew said in the broadcast, that there's a place and a roster spot for guys who are this dang physical on defense or just any position, truthfully. As Tanner Ingle finished the day with 5 solo tackles, and all of them were, ooh, wow, oof, all the sound effects you can think of for when you see a big hit. I mean, these past 3 weeks of this 2025 preseason, he has been delivering on those and making me, and I'm sure all of you, sound out those sound effects I just went through. But I think for somebody who continues to just make big plays and shows that, hey, I belong in the NFL. And that's the key for all of this, Rams Nation, is that in these preseason games, and I've said this in the past post-game reactions, who shows that they belong in the NFL? And I think Tanner Ingle is one of those guys who have showcased that. I mean, my freaking goodness, to let this guy go would be tough, in my opinion. Now, this roster is pretty dang stacked, and we'll get to what Kevin Demoff said about this roster a little bit later in this episode. But there's got to be room for him somewhere. Now, have I gone through every single position and think, okay, who are they going to keep out of this 53? And then obviously the game day 48 of who will be suited up physically. I haven't done that exactly yet. But man, he is continuing to showcase why he belongs on this 53, as he has been someone who has been on the practice squad for the last couple of years and has obviously been someone that Sean McVay, Les Snead, and the staff has wanted to keep around to some capacity, right? If you're on the practice squad 2 years in a row up until this point, they think that you got something valuable to keep you around. So, hey, hopefully he does stick around, even if he doesn't make this 53-man roster or even the game day 48. But Tanner Ingle, Cameron Curl calls him a missile. Everyone's calling him the heat-seeking missile. Sean McVay's giving him compliments during his in-game interview with JB Long, and even Les Snead is saying great things about him, and that's always fantastic when you get the GM, you get the head coach talking positively about you. That's a great sign. But Tanner Ingle, man, I as you guys know, I'm definitely a smash mouth style football fan, right? I like to see run game, beating people up. I like to see hard-nosed defense where people are getting laid out and they're dominating the trenches. I enjoy that style of football. It is very, I guess, demoralizing to your opponent when you're able to win that way, right? It's not just, oh, they schemed up a good play. No, they just kicked our ass physically. I enjoy seeing Rams teams win that way, even if it might be a little ugly. And Tanner Ingle definitely brings that old school physicality that not a lot of players play with, to that ferocity in this modern age of the NFL. So shout out to Tanner Ingle, the strong safety. And I hope he somehow, makes this roster, whether it would be practice squad and gets elevated eventually, or he just flat out makes it. But he was someone who I was very impressed with. And again, shout out to everyone else who played in this game. We'll shout out some other guys real quick here, as yes, we got a lot of Jarquez Hunter this game, but third string fringe O lineman wasn't too productive on the ground because the lanes weren't there. The holes weren't open for Jarquez, as he had 7 carries for 14 yards. Nothing to brag about, right? You got Brendan Presley, getting some carries at the wide receiver position. Pretty cool. Shout out to Jordan Waters, number 36, as he is one of those bubble fringe guys who is unlikely to make this roster, unfortunately. But hey, 6 carries, 42 yards, 7 yards a carry. He had that nice touchdown where he, was running up the gut and then bounced it to the outside. I enjoyed seeing that from him. Schrader had his couple carries. Actually, he had 9 carries, more than just a couple. Only 13 yards, average 1.4 yards per carry. But again, dealing with these fringe third string, bubble backup O linemen, nothing to brag about there. And then, speaking of the O line, hey, were there some guys that had some moments and got some push? Absolutely. But we know majority of them will not play a ton in the NFL for one reason or another. And we'll see who gets kept on the practice squad. And then receiving wise, we talked about Ferguson for his big catches. Shout out to Presley again. He was very active, had the rushing attempts, had 3 receptions for 51 yards. Not bad at all. Then you had, Brendan Covey had his 4 receptions for 32. You had True Edwards have that really cool catch where he kind of bobbled up and he got it back for his 1 reception of 25 yards. Then you had Drake Stoops with the toe drag swag on that big catch. You remember in the red zone there, he had 4 for 23. And then you had Mark Redmond, 1 for 11. And that's on the offensive side. Not a bad day for all these fringe guys. They competed against those Browns starting defense, their second stringers, their third string fringe guys. And hey, they fought pretty dang hard. And I think that's something to be proud of on the offensive side of things. And then defense, Tony Fields had 7 solo tackles, had a sack. You had obviously Tanner Ingle. Chris Paul Jr. Paul Jr. was suited up and played majority of the end of that game, which I thought was very, not puzzling, but very chin scratching, head scratching. As is he on the bubble? Is he not a lock to make this roster based on Sean Dolak not suiting up? Obviously, Omar Spates and Nate Lamon, are the roster, locks as starters. Man, is Chris Paul Jr., on the fringe of not making the team based on, again, all those guys not suiting up and Troy Reader also not suiting up? Maybe trouble for Chris Paul Jr., the all, SEC linebacker that we all have high hopes for. We'll see. So him, and then, of course, Lampkin and other guys. But I think what's pretty cool is that this Rams defense had 6 total sacks on the day. One of them against the starting the starting offense of the Cleveland Browns, one on Joe Flacco, and then majority of the other ones on Shedeur Sanders with that third unit, as Shedeur ran into a bunch, but we'll take it. Don't matter how it happens. Get the sacks, get those negative yardage. And I thought that was pretty dang cool to see from this young group. As again, Tony Fields had a sack. Elias Neal had a sack. You had Darion Kendrick have a sack as he's fighting for a roster spot, former starter. Bill Norton had a sack. Jamil Muhammad had a sack. Brennan Jackson, shout out to SoCal native. He had a sack. So, hey, a lot of guys who got some pretty serious burn today were productive, got to the quarterback, and made some impact. I thought the defense played pretty dang good overall, right? Wasn't perfect. There was some big chunk yardage against that first and second team unit of the Browns starting offense and second unit offense, but not a bad day at all. And you should be proud of that, as this Rams roster is incredibly tough to make. But a lot of these guys who are on that fringe bubble show that, hey, majority of them belong in this league to some capacity. Again, whether it be a 53, whether it be the game day 48 or the practice squad, I think a lot of guys show that they can play some NFL football based on not just today, but the past 3 weeks. And that's pretty dang cool. And that deserves, a round of applause. And you should feel the same way too, Rams Nation. But moving on to some guys who we hope make the roster and some injury updates on them. I mean, offensive lineman Willie Lampkin, as he was somebody who, man, got all the NFL headlines week 1. If you remember, pancake block here, pancake block there, against the Dallas Cowboys. And then unfortunately, was injured recently, and not great news going with him, Rams Nation. As shout out to Stu Jackson as he tweeted or posted this out on X Twitter. Sean McVay said rookie O-lineman Willie Lampkin IV will miss a few weeks after injuring his knee and spraining his ankle in last Saturday's preseason game against the Chargers, as he got some burn at center. He got some snaps and burn at guard, and he was way better at center, in my opinion. And I get it. For being a 5'10" guy, it's easy to get, piled up on and, get ankles rolled, knees sprained and twisted the wrong way. And that's unfortunately what happened to him. But there's no doubt about it. He showed he can play good football in college. He's shown that he can drive people out of the way and pass protect well in this level. And again, against other backups, of course.
What if buying a new appliance felt like a win for your home and your wallet? Save up to 50% plus up to an extra $600 on select major appliances at the Best Buy Appliances Labor Day sale. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy, imagine that.
Your burger is served, and this is our finest Pepsi Zero Sugar. Its sweet profile perfectly balances the savory notes of your burger.
That is one perfect combination. Burgers deserve Pepsi.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive, a leader in boat insurance. Welcome aboard to Carefree Boating. Here, we don't worry about the what-ifs, because we explore with Progressive Boat Insurance for as little as $100 per year for a basic liability policy. Progressive also offers a variety of other coverages and can help you cover repair costs when you need it. And with discounts like multi-policy, safety courses, responsible driver, and more, your mind can really float free. Cruise on over to Progressive.com to get a quote today and see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Rate and discounts not available in all states or situations.
But, Sean McVay did mention that he is an injured reserve candidate, an IR candidate, and that's a great sign for him making this roster to some degree. Now, of course, being on injured reserve doesn't mean you're on the roster, but that does mean like, hey, we want to keep you around. And whether he would be kept on the 53 or the game day 48 or on the practice squad, it's a great sign for any Willie Lampkin fan out there. And I think he will make this team when he does return from his inevitable injured reserve stint, which I think is the case if Sean McVay is saying that. So that's an update on him. Hopefully he heals up as fast as possible. Hopefully he continues to develop. Yes, he is a smaller frame guy, quote unquote, at 5'10". We're the same height pretty much, which is kind of crazy. Obviously, he's a bigger human being overall than me. But, man, sucks to hear, but good news of anyone out there worried about his roster status. I think as of right now, you should expect him to be kept around by the Rams. at least on the injured reserve list, where he will be stashed away for at least the first 4 weeks of the season. We'll see what happens after that. But there's your update on that. And speaking of other offensive linemen, we got a good, positive update about our starting left tackle, Alaric Jackson, as shout out to Gary Klein here with this tweet post. McVay said he was hopeful that left tackle Alaric Jackson would be available for the season opener against the Houston Texans in week 1. As we all know, this is the second time that Alaric Jackson is dealing with blood clots, but he is making some pretty dang good, I would say great progress with this blood clot issue, as he suffered blood clots, if you remember, during the disaster 2022 Run It Back defending champion, Super Bowl champion season, where he got blood clots, a little around the halfway point, a little bit before then, if my memory serves me correctly. And he missed the rest of that campaign and then returned for 2023, 2024. And then here we are again with his second time around of dealing with blood clots. But when we got that news that he was dealing with blood clots back earlier this offseason, I was like, man, he's missing half the season for sure. Man, there is a great chance he misses the entire season, and that's probably okay for his long-term health and stability as a human for the rest of his life. But for the Rams to talk so positively about this situation, where, they have a history of, backtracking a lot of comments about players' health, or even just flat out lying about it, let's be honest, for not only Sean McVay to say that, for Les Snead to talk about it, for other players to kind of hint and mention about how good Alaric Jackson is and looks and what great shape he is overall. This is a very, very positive sign. Now, just like Coach McVay says, I see better than I hear, right? When I see Alaric Jackson in a full helmet and shoulder pads getting practice reps, then I'll know everything's in good shape and positive progress is being made. Of course, that is the benchmark. But for how great everything is saying, there's nothing that's very eerie, or there's nothing that's very ominous or very plain in terms of how they're talking about him. I think this is a great sign. And we shall see in the next week or so if he does play for week 1. Now, I expect him to miss at least the first 4 games, if we're just being honest. I thought best case scenario, he was missing half the season if everything went well. But if he comes back, week 5, I mean, we lucked out crazy if he comes back then. So let's all, I guess, pump the brakes. Let's all say, hey, let's get a week 5 return for Alaric Jackson. Of course, we would love to have him week 1 and anytime sooner than week 5. But I think if we can get him week 5 and beyond playing healthy and good football, I mean, what a blessing that would be. But great news that he's making great progress from the second round of blood clots. And there is optimism around the building that he, has a chance, if things go well these next couple of weeks, he could be out there against the Houston Texans for the home opener and the season opener at SoFi Stadium. And we will need him. Will Anderson Jr., Daniil Hunter, Pro Bowl, all pro level edge rushers. Man, oh freaking man, we got to save Stafford's back, and we need literally his blind side to protect that backside of Matthew Stafford. But freaking A, how about Matthew Stafford, everyone? As I have been pretty, shaky on this conversation and just my overall thoughts of how ominous, how eerie, how, deceitful the Rams have been about the situation for a long, long time. And it is what it is. That's just the truth about it. But we got some freaking good updates. Matthew Stafford finally had his first week of full practice. My goodness. Phew. Wipe the sweat off your freaking forehead, Rams Nation. And I did mine right now. And I've been doing that since I've been seeing all those fun videos of him throwing the ball, moving around, rolling out, contorting his body. Doesn't look like he's restricted. And he wasn't restricted per Sean McVay. And a shout out to Kurt Sandoval, a legend out here in Los Angeles with ABC. Channel 7, if you guys are out here, as he says, nothing is feeling uncomfortable I'm in a good place mentally and physically, Stafford said. It is a day-to-day thing. Some days feel better than others. Progress is not always a straight line. As Stafford said that he aggravated this back training in the offseason, and there wasn't some pinpoint day, as he didn't describe that, and he kept it to himself. I'm sure there was a day where he realized, oh, shoot, my back, it doesn't feel great. But, man, Rams Nation, what a freaking great sign this is. And after last week's preseason game against the Chargers, where team spokespersons were asked whether Stafford had his training, throwing session to see how he felt, and they said no comment, talk to McVay. The press conference with not interim coach, but with Stetson Bennett and other coaches, and no one had a comment about it, and said, oh, Sean McVay is going to handle that on Monday. I mean, what a bad freaking sign that felt. And let's be honest. Whoever was positive about that, shout out to you. But majority of people, including myself, were like, oh, that ain't good. And I truthfully believe that based on that situation and who Matthew Stafford is as a person and a football player, I really believe to my full football heart that he went to Sean McVay, Reggie Scott, the athletic trainer, the health trainer, for body and nutrition and everything else. And he probably went to them up and Snead and said, guys, I'm freaking practicing Monday and you're not going to stop me because this is the only damn way we're going to know if I'm good or not. And based on the way Sean McVay reacted in his press conference this past Monday, I think that was the case, as he Sean McVay, Coach McVay, had a very reserved and kind of just concerned look on his face and kind of like, fingers crossed, we didn't screw up by letting Stafford practice on Monday. Tone to his press conference, the look on his face, as Sean McVay is very expressive with how he's feeling based on how he talks and how he physically looks, with his own two eyes and facial expressions. That's the signals I'm getting, is that Stafford was like, guys, I'm freaking practicing and we're going to find out how really good or not good I am. And since that Monday, he practiced every day since. And Sean McVay, offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, other teammates, other reporters are like, yeah, Stafford looks freaking awesome. And he looks perfectly like the Hall of Fame self that he is. And speaking of other players talking well about him, here's Davante Adams on his his Instagram page, and it was shared on Twitter by other Rams fans. Tay Adams on Instagram, as he shared the post and the video of Matthew Stafford throwing a sideline end zone touchdown to him in practice against the first team Rams defense. And he quoted and captioned, Glock 9, a bad man. That's freaking cool. Shout out to Davante Adams calling Matthew Stafford Glock 9. And that's, a fun name that this Rams fan base has came up with, as, Stafford will sometimes do the pistol Glock, cowboy shoot, and then reholster him. We've seen that celebration a couple of times, man. That's a kick-ass celebration. I hope we see more of that from him. Hopefully no taunting or dumb NFL penalties get thrown on him for that. Fingers crossed. But he's out there. The energy, the vibe is just so much better with your starting quarterback out there, especially when he's a top 5 quarterback, right? I mean, guys, you got Davante feeling great. Reporters with the team, observing the team, notice that the energy on the sideline with players seeing Matthew Stafford out there is so much freaking better. I mean, it is undeniable what a great quarterback can do for any team. And we're just talking about practice right now and vibes. And practicing looks great for Stafford, and the vibes are now back feeling good. I think not just with the roster and the players on this team and the coaches and the front office and everyone, as Leslie joked that he was having sleepless nights. Kevin Dumoffice, said the same thing jokingly, but I know they are not joking that much, as we were all worried about it. And again, the main thing is, can Matthew Stafford survive the season with this back issue, this aggravated disc, or, let's be real, it's probably some version of a herniated disc in some capacity. Can he survive it? When he eventually does get smacked around, because that's just NFL football for you, every quarterback is not going to be untouched every game, that'd be great. We'll find out very soon, especially week 1, going up against a fantastic Houston Texans defense with Danielle Hunter, with Will Anderson, with their, bevy of D linemen that rotate in, where they're pretty deep on that group. And just overall good schematics by their head coach, DeMeco Ryans, former 49ers defensive coordinator, who's given us tough times in the past on defense. It's going to be a nail biter. So when Stafford gets, hit, laid out, sacked, will he get up? Will he be good enough to be Matthew Stafford? Not 75% Matthew Stafford, or 60 or 50, or hopefully no worse than that, where he's able to contort his body to make a great throw, where he's able to roll out and not wince and be in pain, where he's able to step up in the pocket and maneuver and not, be hindered by this back issue. We're going to find out week 1, but as of right now today, what a great sign. He got a full week of practice, full go, no restrictions. And Devontae Adams says Glock 9 is a bad man, and we all know it, and it's great to see him back out there. Whew. Again, I'll wipe off that sweat off my forehead. Thank God. But I'll hold my breath week 1 and beyond, but we'll get there when we get there, right, Rams Nation? You shall. But, speaking of expectations, Kevin Demoff, everyone. I'm pretty shocked that he said this, but, when you think about it as a whole, is it that shocking? Well, President Kevin Demoff, or, Chief Operating Officer, whatever his official title is out of all the other ones, but he is the president of the Rams. He is the face of, Stan Kroenke, you could say, as Kroenke is, the overlord in the shadows, and lets Demoff handle a lot of these, Rams decision-making. Kevin Demoff proclaims the 2025 Rams are the most talented team since returning to Los Angeles, or what I like to call it, the LA 2.0 era. LA 1.0 being obviously the origin of them leaving Cleveland, coming here, winning some NFL championships, having good years, and then obviously bailing to St. Louis, and then coming back here. That is why I call it the LA 2.0 Rams era. But Rams Nation, that's pretty freaking bold. As he said this on Good Morning Football, quote, "I think this is the most talented team we've had since we've been in Los Angeles," as, Rams president Kevin Demoff reflects on the 10 years in this LA 2.0 era. As, of course, Demoff was not part of the original LA Rams back, from the early 90s back, as he was part of, the later Kroenke hiring from the St. Louis era. But, guys, holy crap. Pretty dang bold, in my opinion. As, man, that Super Bowl winning 2021 team was pretty freaking stacked, right? And obviously prime Matthew Stafford, who threw 40-plus touchdowns, had one of the greatest quarterback seasons in the history of the NFL, as he was the first quarterback to win the Super Bowl, throw for 6,000 yards, throw a gazillion touchdowns, have clutch comebacks. Yada, yada, yada. That was fantastic, right? You had Cooper Kupp with the best season by wide receiver ever. Odell Beckham Jr. in the last year of his prime. Robert Woods before he tore his ACL. You had Van Jefferson, his lone good year as a pro. You had Tyler Higbee. You had, all the tight ends that were rotated in that whole season. You had Von Miller. You had Aaron Donald. You had A'Shawn Robinson, Greg Gaines, Leonard Floyd, Eric Weddle, prime Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams when he was playing, fantastic Pro Bowl level football. Nick Scott filling in like a Pro Bowl safety. Jordan Fuller that year. Ernest Jones in his rookie year that was playing good. Kenny Young. We can go on and on about the depth of this team and how good it was, and, et cetera, et cetera. And there's tons of guys I probably left out, but that team was freaking stacked. in my opinion. But Kevin Demoff believes that this team is the most talented. I mean, holy crap. For any leadership in any team to say this outside of maybe Jerry Jones talking too much for the Cowboys, wow. And Kevin's usually pretty careful with what he says about teams and expectation. Of course, he said, hey, that's on paper. They got to go out there and prove it. But for him to just flat out say that, I mean, it is Super Bowl or bust mentality with this roster, which is the right mentality anyway. Whether he would have said this publicly or not, I mean, we all know that this team, anything less than hosting that Lombardi Trophy up in Northern California at the 49ers Stadium, anything less than that is a failure of the season, of course. But freaking A, man. I mean, respect to Kevin for feeling that way and for saying this publicly. And hey, with this team, Matthew Stafford in the twilight of his career, Devontae Adams still kicking ass, prime Puka Nacua, Tyler Higbee in the twilight, Rob Havenstein in the twilight. You have, young Terrence Ferguson, who's got high expectations. Tutu Atwell has high expectations. Jordan Whittington, who's going to play a bunch, we have high expectations for. At least I do. Then you have Colby Parkinson. You have Davis Allen. That's a good tight end room overall. Good wide receiver room overall we just went through. And then you have the O-line, Alaric Jackson, we hope is healthy. And you have Kevin Dotson. You have Steve Avila. You have Coleman Shellen, the LA native, the SoCal native returning to play center. Then you have the defense, the young front seven. Jared Verse, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, Poona Ford, Tyler Davis. You have the linebacker group that we feel good about, right? Lemon, Omar Spades, Dolak, hopefully Chris Poopall Jr., Troy Reader, the Super Bowl champion. Then you have the back end. You got Kobe Durant. You got Akella Witherspoon, Darius Williams, Super Bowl champion, former first-round pick. Oh, my gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. Apologies on that. From Washington. Forgive me. Long day here. And then you have Quinn Lake. You have Cameron Curl, Cameron Kitchens, and the other guy, Tanner Ingle, we were joking about earlier that should make this roster. And you're not joking, but we hope he does. I mean, my goodness, guys. I mean, this, Emmanuel Forbes Jr. There you go. Shout out to anyone who was, thinking, hey, why doesn't he remember his name? There you go. Emmanuel Forbes Jr. for a former first-round pick. But I name all those guys and the starters just to say, man, we're gonna see if they're the most talented Rams team in this LA 2.0 era. But Kevin Demoff sure believes it, and respect to him for saying something this bold. But there's no doubt about it. This roster has a serious chance to go down as a great Rams team. And it is Super Bowl or bust with this roster, with this coaching staff, with this group of players in their twilight, this group of young core players. We shall see what ends up happening. But Kevin Demoff thinks this is the most talented team since they've been back in Los Angeles. Pretty dang cool to see and hear leadership say those things. But, I mean, let me know in the comments section, Rams Nation. Is this 2025 Rams team, in your opinion, the most talented in this LA 2.0 era? Or do you think it's the Super Bowl 2021 team? Do you think it's the 2018 team that should have won a Super Bowl against the Patriots? Do you think, it's any other team during this McVay era or this LA 2.0 era? Or for fun, do you think there's a team in the past in Rams history that was, no doubt about it, way better? I know, greatest show on turf, and there's probably others that we can, name off the top of our heads right now. But who do you think is the best Rams team in team history? And also, who do you think is in this LA 2.0 era? Let me know in the comment section. I'll definitely read and reply to all your fun comments. But that, and then let me know, hey, does Tanner Ingle deserve a roster spot? How do you feel about Terrence Ferguson, his performance in this final preseason game? And then anybody else that you enjoyed seeing play in this game against the Cleveland Browns and, should have an argument to make this 53 final roster, that's coming up very, very soon. Let me know in the comment section. Again, I will read them, I will reply them, and I enjoy everyone, tuning in and commenting and sharing their thoughts on that. But man, what a fun preseason overall. Game 1 was fun, game 2, and even this game 3 with a bunch of fringe guys trying to make the roster or trying to make any roster, I think it was pretty dang fun. As unfortunately, yes, Rams lose 17-19 against the Cleveland Browns, but valiant effort from this young group of guys, and we shall see who makes it in the future. But hey, Rams Nation, if you are on YouTube, again, like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell. And if you're on the audio only or podcast only side of things, share this podcast with all your friends. Any of those options helps other Rams fans to see our content. And man, I very much appreciate it. But week 1 is very, very soon. We'll have plenty of film breakdowns. We'll have plenty of keys to victory episodes. We'll have pre-games. We'll have post games. And we'll have other fun content throughout this whole Super Bowl season, hopefully, in this 2025 Rams campaign. But don't forget, Rams Nation, never forget, go Rams, baby.